So here we'll demonstrate how to work under the flame, keeping everything sterile, especially when we're working with bacteria and growth media. So the first thing you're going to notice here is the rolled up sleeves. This is a very important step because the sleeves are probably one of the dirtiest things on you in the lab. Our sleeves touch pretty much everything up to chemicals and bacteria and stuff like that. So the first thing you do is you roll up your sleeve, wash your hands up to your elbow, and then put on some gloves. You get to your station, you clean up the area with 70% ethanol, making sure that your working bench is sterile. Okay. Now the next thing you want to do before starting to work is to clean your gloves with 70% ethanol, making sure that your gloves are sterile, therefore no bacteria is falling into your medium or your plate. Now you let the ethanol dry off. Now as soon as you're done sterilizing the area, you turn on the flame. So at this point, the heat of the flame is making sure that no bacteria falls onto the bench, keeping an area about this wide sterile. And then I'm ready to start working. Another thing that you need to be careful is once you start opening up your flasks or your medium bottle, you shouldn't be talking. Okay, talking over the flame, there's some bacteria or some germs that could fall into your media and contaminate your samples. Okay, so I'll demonstrate how to work with the flasks and the tips to make sure that there's no contamination. One thing important is to keep them close to the flame. If you see how they're set up here, this pretty much covers the area, and if you put your hands like that, you can still feel the heat. If you go too far, there's no more heat, there's no more protection from contamination. So the most important things, if I'm taking tips with a pipette, I need to make sure that the tip box remains closed. And then if I open it, I take the tip that I need and I close it right back, making sure that it stays sterile. Okay. The only thing that we need to be careful, if you see when I'm taking my pipette and I always go around my flasks. You never want to go over the flask, especially when they're open. So I'll show how to transfer medium from the bottle to the flask. Okay, so again, I make sure that I don't go over my bottle. Okay. I open the flask. I heat the flask and heat the bottle. Just make sure that the broth doesn't come into contact with anything that could contaminate. Then I pour. Heat again. Heat the cap and close. And I do the same with the flasks. Okay. Now the whole way I'm doing that, I'm talking along to explain, but again, when you're doing that kind of stuff, you shouldn't be talking when your bottles are open. The other thing we're going to talk about is how to inoculate a petri dish, an LB agar plate. Okay. So again, I have everything set up under the flame. So what we need to do is add 100 microliter, like the manual says, of our transformed bacteria to the plate. Okay. Always stay under the flame. Take my 100 microliters. Okay. Load the 100 microliters onto the plate. I'm gonna spread it with a spreader. Now these are already in a sterile bag, so they don't need to be flamed or anything. Okay. So what you want to do is just make sure you spread everything all the way across like that, and just with your fingers flipping the plate. Okay. It's just very important to make sure you spread it everywhere. Okay. Then you close it, and when you're done, it's important that you give at least 20 minutes of the plate facing up. You want to make sure that your inoculation dries onto the plate. And then after 20 minutes, when you put it at 37, what you want to do is invert it. The condensation formed is going to fall to the lid and not on your plate. It's important to mention that at this point, even though we're working with a plate that contains ampicillin, that we still keep it under the flame. It's an extra precaution that we're taking to make sure that nothing else contaminates the plate. Now, we know it should be specific to the bacteria that we want to grow because it has the resistant gene, but it's just extra precaution that we take.